600,000 prisoners only come out of prison every year. And all we talk about is the recidivism rate, highlighting failures. But this is a new time now. It's time to celebrate. Time to admire. Time to honor those who got out of prison and never looked back, doing something with themselves and their lives while giving back. This is the re-entry journey. I am your host, Percy.
And we are back with another episode of the Reentry Journey. I am your host, Cardell Sims, and tonight our guest is the first repeat guest that we had since the Reentry Journey. I can highlight this brother's journey story: 12 years of incarceration, built a relationship with the sheriff department. I call you the Flint ambassador. When people ask me about you, I say that's the Flint ambassador because of the work that you're doing. I like to welcome no other, just a warm welcome, man, because I'm gonna bring it up in the podcast, man. I'm just excited to have you on. Welcome to the reentry journey again, Mr. Percy Glover, man. How you been?
Man, I am great. It's good seeing you again, Cardell. Thank you for having me back again. I like the introduction. You said I'm a Flint ambassador. I always say I am truly a Flintstone. I love my city. Born and raised in Flint, Michigan. I am a Flintstone from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. I love my community. So I take that as a very heartfelt compliment.
Right. So for those who may not have seen you on the first episode of the Reentry Journey in the first season, let the people know about yourself. Tell them your story.
Wow. I say all the time now. It's like a lifetime movie. I wouldn't have never thought the role I'm in currently is not something I could have ever predicted. Not something I could have ever thought of in a dream. I'm currently executive director of community engagement for the Genesee County Sheriff's Office. As a formerly incarcerated person, working with law enforcement is a very unique role. Traditionally, when people who have negative run-ins with the law, they are some type of informant, some type of undercover tool for bust and arrest. Not my role 100% at all. I am a community advocate that helps bridge the gap between the community as well as the staff and Sheriff Swanson at the Genesee County Sheriff's Office. I'm also an educator and advocate for the participants who are residing in the jail for the Ignite program. I'm a mentor and coach. I've experienced jail and prison myself, so I've been there and I know what it entails to create a pathway of success after entering community, after exiting jail and prison. So again, it's like a lifetime movie for me. It's interesting all day, every day. The blessings don't stop coming. I was just on a call with Bruce George who was the co-founder of Deaf Poetry Jam. And I was telling him about my testimony and my path, and he was like, wow, dude, you work where? Like, and people always say that. People always pause and say, like, you work where after prison? It's a blessing,
Right.
God put the right people in the right situations at the right time in your life for you. And I'm starting to understand what I'm called to do, how I'm here to service people.
Right. And you saying you started to understand what you're called to do. How does that make you feel?
Overly humbled. One of the things I was sharing with Bruce on the call is that, for me, I've been out of prison 19 years, coming up on 19 years. And back then it was impossible. If you had made a mistake with the law, you couldn't find a job. You couldn't find resources. You couldn't find support. You're the black sheep. Right. And I've been really blessed to have worked in some very unique spaces. I've worked in higher ed. I worked at a local college here in Flint, a local university. I worked for General Motors. I worked for 2 different departments for the state of Michigan. I also even worked at the Flint Parole Office, which is not a likely job assignment for someone that's been to prison. So through all those experiences, I didn't understand what God was preparing me for. I didn't understand what direction he kept pulling me back into, because with every one of those job assignments, there was somebody who had the same experience with jail and prison that somebody was connecting me with. And to the point I had to finally say, you know what, this is my life calling. This is my mission, to help people not only transition successfully back to the community after jail and prison, but also prevent people from falling down that negative path that leads to jail and prison.
Right. And that's like, I'm glad you said that, because I was explaining to someone earlier I was on the call with about how that's you really attacking the front end and the back end. A lot of times when we think about incarceration, we get so focused in on those on the inside and those about to come home, the reentry, that we really lose sight of the beginning, the new numbers, those that's got a high chance of entering in the system and getting a new number. So I definitely agree with that, because you that way you're able to address each and every issue on all sides from the beginning, trying your best to stop it from happening. Those that's on the inside, working with them, helping them create a mindset shift, providing them opportunities for once they're released, and then once they're released, pointing them in the right directions and putting them in positions to be successful and change their whole lifestyle.
Of course. And it's layers to it. I was in a conversation yesterday with a few handful of gentlemen. They said, well, how do we address things? When you're talking about prison reform, you're talking about judicial reform, jail reform, how do we address it? There's no one aspect that you address. There's multiple aspects you have to address, whether it's lobbying, whether it's racial, whether it's economic. There's no one thing that you're looking at fixing. You have to fix multiple things. And if you're not consistently addressing everything holistically, then we have a repeat of that same cycle that we've been dealing with for a very long time.
Yeah, true indeed. So you was talking about how it's different now, the reentry from when you got out of prison into the way it is now. The first time I went to prison, it was in 2001. I got out 2007, and it was no type of nothing. You was out here. If you can find a job, it was basically like the lowest of the lowest jobs, dirtbag job that you knew you would quit anyway. And so, explain that you talking about 19 years you've been out. Explain the changes that you've seen and the growth over them 19 years when it comes to reentry.
Oh man, there was a time where it didn't exist to now where it is bountiful when you look at job opportunities and people who will support, agencies that will support. And then you had that middle where, like you said, there were opportunities for employment, but it was the grunt work. It was the independent manufacturing companies, long hours, low rate of pay.
Yeah, so definitely was the manufacturing companies. That was it.
And it was difficult. You could barely make ends meet. You were tired because you're trying to work as many hours as you can to create a responsible lifestyle for yourself, take care of yourself and your family. And like I said, now today it is beautiful. People don't have those same economic struggles. They don't have those same emotional struggles. They don't have those same mental health struggles after being released from prison, because now there's support systems in place to address those things. So it's like night and day.
Right. And how's important to have people similar to like me and you in those with them backgrounds that been through the fire, that been through prison and got out and been through. People think the fire is really being in prison, not understanding the fire is getting out back then, especially getting out of prison, trying to do the right thing and didn't have the resources. So, but how is it important to have people like us in position to be out there and helping and playing a major role in that field, in that aspect?
It's everything. I love Sheriff Swanson to death. one of my best supporters, great friend, spiritually, does everything to keep me inspired and motivated. But one of the things early on when we were developing an Ignite program, I talked about financial literacy, having that piece, that coursework in the jail and how significant it was, that a lot of people in jail, in prison, in detention centers, they suffer from identity theft. Not only do they suffer from identity theft, but one of the most important aspects of your life once you're coming back to the community after jail and prison is that credit score. That
Right.
credit score means everything. It means everything as it relates to leasing, buying a car. It means everything to renting, purchasing a home. It means everything from a credit report and a background check with an employer, because a lot of employers look at credit scores now. So when I talked about this and then the major impact it would have when we started to look at partners that could come in and teach a financial literacy, a financial wellness class, his initial response was, "Percy, how did you think of that?" I said, "Well, Sheriff, I lived this." So that's just one example of that lived experience making all of the difference around the programming we have at the jail. It makes all of the difference, and not to minimize Sheriff Swanson energy, his compassion to address and reduce jail recidivism. But there's just some pieces from his side, from his personal and professional experiences that don't immediately jump out for him because, again, he hasn't walked in a Percy Glover's shoes. He hasn't walked
Right.
in Alan Bay's shoes. He haven't walked in shoes with people or like people who have spent a significant amount of time in prison, who have been in jail in custody and not as a law enforcement officer or as an employee. So that's different. And it means everything. I say all the time that, politicians coach politicians, athletes coach athletes. Does that mean the coaching doesn't spill over? It does, 100%. But if you
Right.
something successful, you have to have the people who have those lived experiences personally and professionally, because it makes all of the difference.
Yeah, it really does. And so I've seen you've been doing a couple projects over the past few months. But before we talk about them, some of them projects, let's talk about the Project Ignite.
So Ignite inmate growth naturally and intentionally is a concept from Sheriff Swanson. We had a ribbon cutting September 8th, 2020. So Sheriff wanted to turn the jail into a full educational center. As you know, Cardell, on the penal side, prisons do a pretty good job today of providing some level of education, training, whether it be vocational, skilled trades. They have so many different outlets to build yourself up, repair yourself up, educate yourself, and have a skill set or multiple skill sets that you can take back to the community. Jail is idle time. You're just sitting in the jail.
Yeah.
There may be a substance abuse class. There may be some GED. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Idle time.
You might get the G. Yeah, you might get the GED. You most definitely gonna be the substance abuse. They're gonna make sure that they're gonna get that in there. But yeah, you might get the GED. So yeah, you're right.
But not a lot. Not a lot to develop a skill set or skill sets, and not a lot to develop your resume. So, and especially that's significant now because a lot of jails across the country with COVID, the courts being closed for almost 2 years, created a real backlog and back jam of people being processed through pretrial services. So now you have people in jail that would traditionally be there a year, maybe 2 years after sentencing, are now there 3, 4, 5 years. So it makes sense to have something that people are just not sitting idle, that people are just not wasting time, but they're being productive in the development of themselves and redevelopment of themselves. So Ignite, again, inmate growth naturally and intentionally through education. I'll say it modestly, but we have everything now. We have Elwood Credit Union, who teaches financial literacy, fitness. We have Dr. Shan Jackson from Michigan State University that does a healthy eating class. We have employees from the Krim Foundation that does a mindfulness class. We have we have a VR station, virtual reality station that has about 20 of the skilled trade assignments on there. The local college, Mott Community College, in a few weeks will be teaching CNC operation and virtual welding, where they will be certified.
Oh, how did virtual welding? How they gonna do virtual welding? I ain't never heard of virtual welding.
So literally, they have the mask with the screen on the mask, and they actually have the gun, and it's all simulated. So the only things that are missing is just like welding and what you would get in the classroom without the spark.
I like that.
The process procedures are literally the same.
I like that. That's dope. I like that.
And they'll get a certification that they can leave the jail and immediately have two options: go back to Mott Community College and continue their coursework, or find employment right away.
Right.
We also have CDL, where we don't have a virtual CDL simulator in the jail yet, but we do we do CDL, and we do the book portion. So once you leave the jail, the only instruction you need from that point is the driving piece.
The driving piece. Right.
So you've already knocked out half of that process.
Just like that.
Just like that. So when I say
them are good paying financial jobs, them ain't the bottom of the barrel.
And these are jobs that people can immediately go make 70, 75, 80,000 right away.
Right away, right.
I mean, it also addresses, the incarceration has two pieces. There's a generational incarceration piece, and then there's a generational poverty piece. If you look at families where the grandfather experienced jail and prison, if you looked at families where the grandfather and dad experienced jail and prison, you look at families where the grandfather, the father, and the son has experienced jail and prison, there's one key aspect that's consistent along the family tree: poverty.
Poverty, right.
So it also addresses that aspect, because now you have people who are in career spaces that are now making ways that they can actually take care of their family. That now addresses that generational impoverished piece that families are struggling with. Right.
And they're able to provide it. They're able to do it at a younger age because it's there now. Despite like when we was getting out it, you had to really grind your way through it. So that's a major plus, because it starts you off at an early age with the mindset of, I'd rather be making this money doing this than be out there in the streets. The mindset that we developed, I ain't gonna say we did, I developed until I was 37, 38, after I got tired of going in and out of prison, to come out of prison and have these things, especially when I'm thinking like welding, and to see like you said, them at least $80,000 a year, and you can come out and a lot of people ain't making $80,000 a year. Let's be honest, a lot of people in the streets and stuff ain't making no $80,000 no year. A lot of them out there really penny pinching and putting their life on the line for really a bunch of nothing in a sense. So I highly respect that, man, and what you're doing, and with them programs. I think a lot of people need to recognize and take the same blueprint that Ignite is doing and implement all that. And man, that just that whole program right there, the virtual. I'm stuck on the virtual welding because I know people who got out and they had to go to welding school, and they changed their whole life around. And so and with the CDLs, most definitely, that's a plus as well. I was on the CDL is real big right now.
Very big. You have most drivers, all of my friends, all of my colleagues that I know that drive, whether they're driving for a company or they're driving independently because they own their truck or multiple trucks. By September of last year, everyone, regardless of what category you in, they cleared six figures by September of last year.
Right.
Six figures. So think about somebody who spent the last couple of years in jail, and think about the impact that has had on the family financially, where the wife, the spouse, the partner was struggling, trying to send money, address attorney fees, take care of the children, maintain household. And now you have that second provider coming back to the community and 10, 11 months after being out, they've made 80, 90,000. That changes the whole landscape of the family.
Yeah.
That changes the whole landscape of the family to the point where that person who was in jail, they don't have to look back towards those things they were doing that put them in jail.
Mm-hmm.
That suffering that the partner was going through financially while the other partner was in jail, that's all now removed.
Right.
And now it provides that stability from a family structure. Now you have two people in the household maintaining the love, the emotion, the mental, the spiritual, and now financial support to the children. That changes the whole dynamic of the family tree, where we're now curving that generational incarceration cycle because now the kids are not following the steps of that parent or parents that made those same mistakes that put them in jail and prison.
So you've been doing a lot of work in Genesee County, but I heard, you've been up in Hamilton County. What's been going on up there?
Oh, you say Hennepin?
Yeah.
Yep, we visited Hennepin County. It actually Hennepin County Sheriff's Office was our first partner that took on Ignite and implemented it in the Hennepin County Jail. Since then, we have 6 more partners across the country, and we have 22 more in the hopper that will be implementing the Ignite program across the country.
Oh wow!
So this is the new way. We tell people all the time that if a person is going to prison, they had to enter a jail first.
They had to.
There's no way around that.
Yeah, they had to.
Prison for a short time, a modest amount of time, or a lengthy time, you had to enter a jail first. And not only did you have to enter a jail first, probably about 70, 80% of the people that enters a jail, they're going back to the community right away. There's a smaller percentage of people that go into prison, and there's even a very much smaller percentage of people that's going away to prison for a very long time. So if we having participants or people go back to the community right away, they're going to be our neighbors. We're going to see them in the community. Why not support them to be successful? As taxpayers, as community members, as our next door neighbors, as our neighbors who are around the corner from us, we want them to be successful. We want to look at the entire health of the community. It's not just my household. It's not the person right next to me or across the street from me. We're all in this together. And if we're all in this together, we want to look at the health for everyone.
Right. So, man, how does it make you feel knowing that a part of you being a part of something, the foundation of something, after coming out of prison, doing 12 years, been working hard, grinding, going through the fire. You went to my college. What did my college tell you? What did they what did they ask you?
You have a really good memory.
Yeah, what
take me back. So one of the first experiences when I first came home, I was released that Friday, New Year's Eve. That following Tuesday, I was a student sitting in the classroom. And over the next few weeks, as a student at my community college, staff and faculty said, "What the fuck are you doing? What the fuck are you doing here? You'll never graduate." And that just tells you about the culture back then for people who have made a mistake. And honestly, for some people that didn't make a mistake, you have a long list of people who are you seeing daily now being commuted, being released from prison because they were wrongfully convicted. So it's not only people who have made very poor choices and mistakes, but also a lot of people who are in jail and prison who haven't done anything wrong. The National Organization of Exonerees wouldn't exist.
Right.
There wasn't so many wrongfully convicted people. But again, to the point, is that the culture was so intense in such a negative way that staff and faculty, spoke to me very roughly and said, "What the fuck are you doing here? You'll never graduate." But on the bright side, look how far we've come.
Exactly. And
my community college now teaches classes in the local prison that's 30 minutes away.
Right.
So look how much. So look how far we've come.
Yeah. And that's come from the work that you put in, and that's why I was getting to, like, how does it make you feel now, just sitting here and you know where you came from, you know what you faced, and you created and a part of this program that's going into jails and providing these vast opportunities. I got to say, vast opportunities, amazing opportunities, that is really a game changer for those that implement this. Like for the jails to implement this, like, this is a true game changer, not just for the jails, but for the communities or the surrounding communities.
So, along this through my process, again, I didn't realize what God was preparing me for. I also didn't realize that as I was doing my very best to stamp out a pathway for myself as a professional, I didn't realize the impact I was having. Me also being a past employee of my community college back then, 15 years ago, that was unheard of. You didn't see that. Moving forward, being a program director at Michigan Works here, being an employee at the parole office, being community coordinator for Region 6 parole for 6 cities across Region 6. All of those things were unheard of for a person who had been to prison.
Right.
I know when we first talked in the first podcast, one of the things you said to me, like, dude, I've been checking you out for a long time. I didn't realize the impact I was having on people like Cardell that said, you know what, that brother did it. I can do it.
Exactly.
Plugging away, not understanding the impact culturally across the board for the people or systemically. I didn't understand it. When I understood it, it's now what we have now, where it's just so much more intentional, where, again, I'm a formerly incarcerated person that works at the sheriff's office. How the hell?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's what got me. That's when I started fighting. I'm like, well, how this? Wait a minute, hold up. From that point on, I just started following you. Yeah.
It's just so much more intentional, where before, again, I was just plugging away and I had it in the back of my mind that, okay, what I do is what I'm going to do to make it easier for somebody else coming behind me. But I didn't know how or what that meant broadly across the whole spectrum. Now I get it. Like, oh, wow, I am really destined to be and do some things to help not just myself, but a long list of people across the board. And I say it all the time. I say my worst experiences is my best education and service to people. Having experienced jail and prison and a lot of different negative things in life, it gives me all of the understanding from the humanistic side to help people.
Right.
Because that's what we're here for, service each other.
That's what we're here for, to service each other, most definitely. Because matter of fact, speaking of service, while I'm thinking about it, I ain't got no institutions in Michigan on my 100. I'm putting together a team. Yeah, I ain't got no institutions on Michigan on there, so I got to get some on there. Yeah, I got to get. We got to figure that out, because I sure ain't got none. I'm just in there thinking, man, I make a stop in Michigan, I can stop doing C, but I'm like, wait, I ain't got even no Michigan stops on there yet.
Definitely can get you in Flint. You can come on to county jail. We can make that happen.
So, all right. I know another thing I seen back in August last year, how y'all was doing the jail inmates. Y'all was casting the absentee ballots. Tell me about that experience.
So, wow. I always say that's my granny moment. So when we started jail voting about 4 years ago, across the country, really, there was no real systems in any jails anywhere that had jail voting. So one of the first opportunities for us to collect absentee ballots for people who were not sentenced, because if you're sitting in the jail in Michigan and you're not sentenced, you can still vote absentee ballot through an in-person process or through a mail process. So one of the first elections we supported, we made Good Morning America. And I was like, what? I'm like, we made Good Morning America for what?
Right.
They're like jail voting. I'm like, really? So when I say that was a granny moment, that's just one of those moments I say, I know Granny was looking down from above at me like, okay, that boy finally got it together. He's doing what he's meant to do. And just take it a little further, this past November marked the 10th straight election that we've done jail voting. And I'm in talks now with the Secretary of State here in Michigan and the Bureau of Elections, where we're working on getting a precinct in the jail. So that is really got me excited. It's not quite there yet. We're still in the preliminary discussions, but I believe 90 to 60 days, 90 days to 6 months from now, we'll have a voting precinct in the Genesee County Jail. So yeah, we're doing everything.
Yeah, man. Mr. But you ain't doing no faking out there, man. You
man, we get into the work, Cardell.
Get to the work.
I
love it, man. I love it.
One of the things we've also done, which spills over to the community, which a lot of people don't understand, that a lot of the things that happen in the jail is not about criminal behavior. It's not as much about jail reform. It's not about wrongfully convicted. It's about all those things, but it's also about the humanistic piece to it. Voting is something that is significant to people broadly, not just in the jail, but also outside of the jail in the community. Financial literacy is not just specific to people in jail. That's specific to people broadly and even in the community. And one of the things that I started to understand from a human side, and one of the reasons why people don't vote, is lack of familiarity with the candidates. People don't feel comfortable or understand or know people enough from just a political professional level to say, okay, this is the person we want to vote for. So to address that, because that's even heightened in the jail, because you lack newspapers, you lack access to social media, you lack access to the news, so you have no idea who to vote for, especially if you've been in the jail 2, 3, 4 years. You have no clue who's campaigning that matches up, and their campaign matches your views. So one of the things for us to address this from an educational standpoint, we brought the candidates to the jail.
Right. Okay.
So we've had 4 Meet the Candidates forum. The last one was Meet the Judicial Candidates, where people were campaigning for the Michigan Supreme Court, where people were campaigning for Michigan Court of Appeals, and people were campaigning for a local judicial seat. And people were like, Percy, how in the heck did you do this? I said, by God, because it was unprecedented, to have people from a judicial standpoint coming to speak to a population of people and a disenfranchised population of voters inside of a jail, where I tell people, Michigan Court of Appeals, Michigan Supreme Court Justice, those elected officials in their specific, in their roles, is much more of an impact for people in jail. Those seats have no real impact for me or somebody in the community. I am 100% retired from being on the negative side of jail and prison. I'm retired.
Right. Yeah. Right.
But somebody going through the court process, or somebody in jail that may be sent to prison, Michigan Court of Appeals mean everything for them in regards to their case being reviewed again a second time or third time, and even more so for Michigan Supreme Court. So the impact of having that group of people who are campaigning, like I said, it was unprecedented. It was historic, and it's now because society has done a poor job of not creating access for people in jail to be able to vote. They're starting to understand that, we do need to give them the same level of education to cast an informed vote.
And what's the biggest misconceptions that you have gotten when it came to putting these the voting in place inside the jails? What was one of the biggest misconceptions?
That's a great question. So it's probably 2 misconceptions. The first one is, and I've heard this a few times, that people in jail will vote out of boredom. That is so not true. It's 100% opposite. That people in jail will not vote because, again, lack of familiarity with the people campaigning, lack of understanding and knowledge to the proposals, legislation that's on the ballot, and the same things as people of color that we struggle with. Distrust for the system, my vote won't matter, my personal issues, my personal struggles with being in jail, the mental health issues and things I'm struggling with that were there before I came in jail that's now heightened now that I'm in jail. So that's probably the biggest misconception, that people in jail will vote out of boredom. It's so not true. Now, for us and the work that I've spearheaded, it's now kind of the thing. When I say the thing, meaning that the people in jail that has been there for some time, they now understand the importance of voting. They now understand the impact it has. We had a young lady that provided a great testimony last year that was unfortunately sent away to prison, but she said very openly and to the news reporter that, you know, I'm in jail, but my vote matters not only for me, but it matters for my family and my community. That it's not just an I, me thing. It wasn't just an IT against things. It was something that impacts everyone that she needed to look at. You know, so now that they have the education, the understanding is there where it's different. But again, the major misconception is that people don't vote, or they will vote because of out of boredom, because there's nothing else to do. So not true.
Right. Yeah. And that also impacts those on the inside as well, on the aftermath, because we all know on the inside, once we get access to something, it spreads like wildfire. Like, hey man, they got the vote. We get the opportunity to vote. We get and then more and more people start locking in, and then that becomes the culture. So when new people come through that jail, that's already part of the culture. So it's when it comes voting, like, hey man, y'all been talking. You get to talking about the candidates and stuff like that. So that's a strong culture to build. I would think, because when you first brought it to me, I was thinking like voting in jail. A lot of people probably say, man, how can I vote because I'm incarcerated? You know, and being in some states where they already have the felons can't vote. And so how does that balance out? Is it because they get the opportunity to vote because they haven't been convicted of a felony yet?
So for how it works in Michigan, if you're arrested in the jail in Michigan, just Michigan, because like you said, laws are different across the country, across different states. For Michigan, if you are in jail and you are awaiting sentencing, awaiting pretrial services, and have not been sentenced, that's the one piece. If you have not been sentenced, you can still vote absentee ballot.
Okay.
And all of this is legislation that we need to look at across the country. You know, there's no reason why, especially a person in jail, even in prison, but that's a totally different conversation, but especially a person in jail that is still, because even in those states that you can't vote and you, as a convicted felon, if you're sitting in jail in one of those states where you can't vote as a convicted felon, but you're in jail going to pretrial services and you haven't been sentenced, you still should have access to a voting process. It's a constitutional right.
Yeah, most definitely.
It's a constitutional right that should not be removed for somebody sitting in jail that has not found guilty in those states where felons can't vote.
Right.
It's a constitutional right.
Exactly. They just ain't got nobody to push the votes doing what you're doing. That's basically what it boils down to. And yeah, so man, that's crazy. I'm gonna have to look in there on the Missouri side, man. That's a very powerful move to recognize that, because like I said, a lot of the misconception is, are we in jail, not even thinking about whether or not you got the conviction or not already, but just the fact that you in jail. They think that, you know what I'm saying, they're not able to vote.
And it still spills over. I mean, a lot of people in states where you can vote as a convicted felon, a lot of people with felonies don't recognize or understand that. Some people still have that misunderstanding that, oh, I'm convicted felon, I can't vote.
Yeah, I voted for the first time last year. For the first time in my life ever, voted last year. Yeah, I definitely did. I'm utilizing my rights. It's not no game with me. I'm utilizing it. I'm utilizing every aspect, and I believe, especially, you know, on the local level, because I witnessed one when I got out of prison, and I got a nonprofit organization back in the back at home, and it's geared around rebuilding the community that I helped destroy when I was in the streets. So we do programs and things like that. And I sit and watch a sheriff basically up for a ballot, you know, in my hometown. It really needed it. Needed a new sheriff and everything. And I literally watched the people rally around a couple of people from I know Percy in my community get together and back the sheriff. He bring them over, talk to the people, the new sheriff that's running for that was running for sheriff at the time, bringing them over. So I literally seen how a community come together and voting can change the dynamics of a situation. Because at that time, it was just bad. Wasn't nothing. Young lady got killed. They killed the young lady. It just a lot of stuff was going on, and it really needed to be revamped because it was a system that had been going on for probably about 20 years. And you seen the community get the killing was the fed up point to where you see in the community the people that normally didn't vote and say they vote didn't matter and everything like that came together and voted and put a whole new sheriff, and it's a whole new different vibe in that aspect. So once I really seen that and understood the power of vote, I said, man, as soon as I get my voting rights back, I'm going to go vote. And I got it back, and I went to go vote.
So you touched on two really interesting pieces, you know, law enforcement and the struggle with law enforcement and policing in the community, which is something obviously with moments like Breonna Taylor and George Floyd that we have to address. You know, I will be very honest when I say this, that, you know, my work with the sheriff's office hasn't always been easy. You know, there were some challenges. Staff didn't immediately take on. You know, they were like, what? This don't make sense, you know. But it's one thing when it comes to service that has to be there. Consistency. And when you're doing the right thing, that motivation to be consistent is easy, but you have to be consistent. You know, you have to be consistent if you want to see real change, because it's not easy, honestly. You know, I'm professionally and personally working at a sheriff's office that, you know, 95% of people are like, no, we don't want to see this happen. But slowly and surely, they started to understand how this makes sense, how this is a support, how this is helpful to the cause, how this is useful to change, you know. Because again, it goes back to what I said earlier. We want to make every system healthy. Obviously, there's a lot of things broken systemically across the country, and this is one. And hopefully, people look at me and Jonell Ellen Bay as examples of how anything and everything that makes sense can work, you know. And I know that sounds a little interesting in how I worded that, but most people would not see how a formerly incarcerated person or returned citizen or ex-felon or whatever description or terminology we want to use, how could they work appropriately with law enforcement? That doesn't make sense initially when you say that. But when you see and understand the education needed for all people, the education needed for the people in jail that we don't want to see returning back to jail, that we want to provide those resources and services to keep them out, you understand how it makes sense.
Exactly. So you inspire me because my brain sitting here racking. I'm finna reach out into the jail and stuff in my community and see just what type of things that they do have as far as just any type of programs and things of that nature. I think what you're doing and the path that you're setting and the blueprint, to me, it's a blueprint, another blueprint that I'm sitting back listening to you say, and I'm like, man, it's kind of like the first time when I first saw your story, and I was like, okay, and I can just sit back and watch the blueprints and the foundation that you land. It's just amazing work. What's next for you?
So what's next? Fair Voting Alliance. So I am finishing the paperwork for my 501c3, Fair Voting Alliance, free access and inclusive rights. So one of the core root to all problems for the Black community is economic. We're poor. Before COVID, I'm not sure how those numbers have changed, but before COVID-19, 60% of Black people in America were in poverty. In poverty.
Right.
And if you look at every systemic issue Black people as well as brown people are struggling with, whether it's high school dropout rate, teen pregnancy, teen drug abuse, alcohol abuse, it all stems from some economic piece. Whether it was single mom can't afford a babysitter, can't afford a tutor, can't afford after school extracurricular academic activities. It all stems from something economic. So now that I've been on this mission with jail voting and supporting elections and voter mobilization and voter education in the community, I started to have to understand what impact does it have on the Black and brown community when we don't vote? What is the economic ramifications for us when we don't vote? So that's our primary mission, to look at that. Understanding, addressing the economic ramifications when Black and brown communities don't vote. How does it impact us? Because there's an impact.
Right.
And there's an impact that I don't think politically, socially, culturally, that no one is really examining. So I think that's important for my organization to start identifying those issues around there and start educating the people. And a piece of that education would, I believe, motivate people to get to the polls.
Right. Exactly. So any final words? I gotta ask the question because I always ask the questions on the episode. I asked you this the first time, so I don't know. It might change. It might have changed now. If you had one word in this journey that you have, and right now in the journey and everything that you've done up to this point, if you had one word to describe that journey, what would that one word be and why?
I think the first time I said resiliency, I was just adjust a little bit and say consistency.
Okay.
Consistency. One of the things I'm constantly saying every day is that I'm gonna take lemons and make lemonade. Consistently being optimistic, consistently doing your research, consistently looking at new ways to grow and educate yourself, consistently looking at new relationships in a positive way, just being very consistent.
And there it is. I appreciate you coming on, sharing your journey, giving us an update.
Thank you.
On where you at. If someone wants to reach out to you and get in contact with you, how do they do that?
Same way as before. You can give me a call or text at any time, 810-210-4041, percy.glover@outlook.com. I'm an open book. I'm ready to look and explore at opportunities for myself to make a change in the community, for others. Let's talk soon, Cardell. Let's figure out how.
We got to talk because we got to get you on this tour, man,
and see how we can get you to a couple jails in here in Michigan.
Yeah,
so
get us on because we ain't trying to miss no states, man. And I'm just looking like, man, I ain't got Michigan.
We got an open door here for you in Genesee County.
Oh yeah, look, we come, man. We coming.
Okay. All right. Thank you, brother. I love you to death.
All right, love you too, man. You have a great day, man. And I wish you nothing but great success, man. And I'm still gonna watch you. I'm still watching you. I'm still following the blueprint. And so know that you continue to inspire me to continue to push the limit and go further and further. You're one of those people that I look at in the field and I watch and I study the blueprint. So man, I appreciate you for that.
Man, thank you so much. Let's talk soon, Cardell.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So, oh man, that's another episode of the Reentry Journey. I am your host, Cardell Sims. I'd like to thank Mr. Glover for coming in and sharing his story, sharing this journey with us, updating us on where he's at. I'm really excited about how he's going inside these jails and bringing these jail programs as far as the virtual reality world and the CDL programs, and giving these people opportunities to a skill and a trade, so when they walk out of there, they prepared to change their whole life around. They prepared to enter the workforce and step up in their affairs in life. And so I salute Percy for that, man. I'm just amazed at that, along with the voting as well. I think that's a big misconception of people that's getting inside the jails that haven't got that felony yet, and they think just because they're incarcerated that they can't vote. So that's important as well. So once again, thank you, Percy, for coming on and continue to do the work. I really appreciate you and the work that you're doing. I think we all appreciate you and the work that you're doing, and continue doing it, my brother. Give you your flowers right now. And thank you for being a guest on the Reentry Journey. I am your host, Cardell Sims, and I'll see you next time. The Reentry Journey.
$600,000 prisoners are released from prison every year. And all we talk about is the recidivism rate, highlighting failures. But this is a new time now. It's time to celebrate. Time to admire. Time to honor those who got out of prison and never looked back. Doing something with themselves and their lives while giving back.